Good night, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dialogue with the Diaspora. I am your host, Diane Haylock. March is Women's Month, and on March 8th, we celebrate International Women's Day. This month is dedicated to honoring the achievements of women all across the globe, and is typically a time for women from all different backgrounds and cultures to band together to fight for gender equality and women's rights. And so we are very excited tonight to have with us 4 Belizean women who have made significant strides in their respective fields in our sister Caribbean country of Barbados. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Darla Humes, advisor to the President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Denise Young Brown, CEO and Creative Director of Innovative Interior Design Group Incorporated, Cecily Gillett, Plant Manager, Banks Barbados Brewery Limited, Anne Wallace Elcock, Partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers Barbados. Welcome, ladies. It's absolutely great to have you on with us tonight.
Thank you.
Let me first ask you the question that is always on our listeners' mind, and that is for us to know more about your Belizean roots and how and when you ended up in Barbados. So, who wants to go first? Anne, perhaps you can go?
Sure, why not? I was born in Belize City. I grew up on Vernon Street. I'm not sure if they call it, I don't think it's named Vernon Street anymore, to Keith and Evelyn Wallace, but I was actually raised by Daisy Robertson. And if I have any claim to fame, it's that my Daisy raised me, actually. I think everyone in Belize is familiar with Daisy Robertson of the then 56 Vernon Street. I left Belize to go to university in New York, and in a very short story, I ended up here in Barbados because I met my husband in university. He is Belizean and I was Belizean. I was living in New York at the time. And we got married, and I am here in Barbados now. And the poor fella, he can't get rid of me, at least not so easily.
Yeah, Darla, how about you?
Well, I'm from the north of Belize City, Victoria Street. I spent my entire years in Belize on Victoria Street. I was born there, and that's where I have my roots. My parents now, well, I should start. I think my parents, my father in particular, he was the Victoria. His roots are buried in Victoria Street. That was his family home. My mother, she had her origins on Barrack Road. From what I recall her telling me, she grew up by the canal side, in Walter Hood Yard. Actually, not too far from where you grew up yourself, Diane.
Yes.
So I think we go way back to those days.
Yes, indeed.
Where we have those roots. Yeah, so I'm a Belize City girl. I went to Ebenezer School. Very proud of that. Those very humble beginnings, but I think they were extremely important in who I became eventually. And then I went on to after I left Ebenezer School, I went to St. Catherine Academy, then to St. John's Sixth Form, on to Jamaica, the University of the West Indies, Mona campus, where I think my interest in the wider Caribbean really evolved. But I stayed on in Jamaica. I completed my first degree. I went on to England, did my second degree at London School of Economics, and then back home to do service. A team from the Caribbean Development Bank came to CDB, came to Belize, met me at the Central Bank. And the Director of Economics at the CDB at that time um, expressed an interest in me joining the CDB. I did not initially, but I think within a year, I did take him up on that offer. And the rest is history. I came to Barbados in 1983, so I think I'm the first of the girls to arrive in Barbados. I have a much longer
Time there.
association,
Yeah.
a much longer
Yeah.
association with Barbados. And I have been here for most of that period with a short break when I spent about 8 or 9 years in New York, but made it right back to Barbados. And like Anne, I think the anchor is my husband. My husband is Barbadian, and so here am I, still at the CDB after all this time.
All right, so let's hear from Denise.
Hi. I grew up in Belize from the age of 4. I was born in the UK, but at the end of the day, I'm a Belizean. Don't have call me anything else but a Belizean. My dad is one of the Youngs from the Canal side, south side, because you know there are many Youngs, so we are the Canal Youngs. My dad, yes, Edward Young. He's no, but most people, his friends know him as Junior Young.
Right.
See, somebody said right. My mom was Koi Hyde, and Koi with an E, C-O-Y-E, and not C-O-Y-I, from Douglas Jones Street. And most people know Miss Rhoda. I believe, Darla, since you grew up right around the corner, your mom probably knew my grandma. No. I went to Wesley, like the Youngs, the Kennelside Youngs. Everybody know they are Methodists. So I had no choice. I went to Wesley Primary School all the way up to Wesley College. And then I transferred over to technical. After I left technical, I was good in science. I always wanted to be an interior designer from the time I graduated from Wesley College. But as we know, there wasn't a scope for interior design in Belize. So I did what I did best, science. And I went to work at the veterinary lab. The veterinary lab by YWCA. I can't remember the name of the street. From there, I got a scholarship and I went to the UK to study. And apart from studying, you also had to do research at the Central Veterinary Lab. And I was the only Black girl, the only female of color in the institution. There were about 5 other Black males, one being a West Indian. All the others were Africans. And he spent a year. He finished after a year. When I was there, I had an extra year. And by then, I think I realized I was in love. And I came and I stopped in Barbados, much to my father's alarm. And I ended up, that's how I ended up in Barbados.
History.
I got married.
The rest is history.
Yes, I ended up here because of marriage.
Yeah, so let's bring Cicely in here.
Hi. Yes. Well, I've been here the least amount of time with these ladies. I, like everybody else, I'm a Belize City, Gillette. Parents, Russell and Alana. Russell from Belize Bank, Royal Bank of Canada. That's the only place I've ever known him to work all my life, right up to when he retired. My mom was a teacher. Most people know her as a teacher. Roots, I started my education at St. Hilda's way back when, probably in the last years. And then to All Saints, like Darla, St. Catherine's, St. John's Sixth Farm. And then I was teaching for a while at Wesley College, at ACC, and then finally got some money and moved on to university. I did a year at Mona, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, and then decided engineering was it. So I moved over to Trinidad, got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and moved back home That would have been 99, in 99. Somewhere along the line, they tell me I was the first female Belizean mechanical engineer. Nobody has been able to fact check and say no or yes, so I carry that feather in my cap. I worked at BEL for about a year. Then, like Denise, I would have found a Barbadian man that turned my eye away from beautiful Belize. And I promised him, I said, all right, you can get 5 years. 5 years, I will come and see what Barbados is all about. I had a great job at the time. And well, although that relationship is no longer the case, 20 years later, here I am, who I am, enjoying it.
So I understand that you all maintain a very strong and close bond of friendship in Barbados. Talk with us a bit about this bond, how it got started, and how you stay connected.
Well,
Anybody?
I'll start with Derla. Today I was thinking about how I met each person. Way back when I was 18, Derla was the first one I knew. I had a summer job at the central bank. Derla was my first boss at the age of 18. And then when I came back to Barbados, well, you turned up your ears. You were a good boss. You were an excellent boss.
Remember, we don't like anybody aging us here, you know, Denise.
Age me too. Age me too.
But Denise, you don't have to say everything. You know, keep something private.
Listen, we're Belizeans.
Well, when I got married and came to Belize, Adrian, which is my husband, said to me, do you know this young lady by the name of Denise Brown? He said Brown.
Yeah, he said Brown.
Oh, I don't know any Denise Brown.
Yeah.
He said, actually, no, I think her name is Denise Young Brown. I said, mean Denise? He said, yes. I said, so of course I know Denise. And obviously, growing up, I wouldn't have said that because it wasn't that. Denise was older than I was. And it was her sister that was friend to Angie, who is my sister. So I knew you knew Denise because of the family relation.
And I went to school with your sister, with Pam.
Exactly.
Right.
So, when you land in a new place, the first thing you try to figure out your way about. And although we're Caribbean people, Belize and Barbados are two different things. And obviously we're Caribbean culture, Belizean culture and Barbados culture are two different cultures.
Two different things.
And so you're looking for something to anchor you, someone who you don't have to speak, you just have to look and they understand, they know what you're for. And that's the first person I actually connected with was Denise, because my husband would tell you he sells light, and Denise is obviously a designer, so they're in that business. And then how I knew Derla because, like Denise, another sister of mine used to work with Derla at the Central Bank in Belize way back when. Derla, not to age anybody, we all look fabulous. What can I say?
Exactly, Anne.
And then I met Cecily at one of the Belize functions where at the time Steve Duncan was here, Steve and his wife, and we used to have these fabulous Belize functions with every Belizean. Golf he was at CDB at the time was here, and we used to have these functions. Slusher, any Belizean that you knew wherever they were, we would get together. That's where I met Cecily.
We really miss Steve.
Yes.
Because that's where I met Cicely too.
That's right.
We were trying to remember today. And she reminded me. I couldn't remember where I met her.
I was like, how did we come together? And then just out of that wider Belizean community, at least for me in Barbados, we just kind of gelled. Each of us fitted something else in each other's life. And at least for me, these ladies, and another person who is really known is called, I think all of you are familiar with, is Dr. Carla Barnett she's back in Belize now, but when she arrived here in Barbados, she was the next one. And garnaches and panades. No, we used to show up at Carla's house and eat down the place. It's as simple as that. And in that, I think we build a bond as I said to Audrey, when I'm with these ladies, sometimes there's no words necessary. We'd be in a place together, we'd see something, And we just have to look at each other and we either burst out laughing, no words necessary, we burst out laughing, or we do that.
So the relationship
Yeah, but
is
I think
important to all of you.
Yes.
I can say that. Yes.
What I'd like to add is that I think, and certainly I believe the girls were saying that earlier, I think our stars started to align long before we arrived in Barbados. I mean, we didn't know that. Yes, I was at the central bank. Denise was working there. Anne had her sister there. And Anne made her presence known whenever she visited the central bank. So we knew Anne as a little tot, but certainly very much, the Anne we know today. Cecily was the only one that I didn't know before I came to Barbados. But strangely enough, I knew about her family connections. I knew about her father, that he was the first of two Black Belizeans who had been recruited as trainee managers by Royal Bank. Now, for a young person growing up at that time, that was very, very significant. And so that stuck in my mind. I knew his brother because his brother was married or is married to Maureen, that I know better as Florence Fitzgibbons Gillen. We both grew up on Victoria Street. We both went to St. Catherine's together, and we were close. So I knew that connection. Immediately we came together, I was able to place those landmarks and those family relationships. And I think those are some of the things that also drew us together, even somewhat unconsciously. They formed the bonds.
So no matter how many Belizeans are there, the point is that you girls and guys get together, hang out, and eat Belizean food together, of course. Yes?
Not anymore. Not since Carla started us.
Yeah, so I'm pleased, Diane, don't embarrass us that way. We eat food together. I am not sure if it would qualify necessarily as Belizean food, but we try. We try.
But they just pulled up a picture there, one of us at a tea party, and I think just to demonstrate that tea party, and this is another tea party, which was just for four.
That was your birthday. Yeah. This one was your birthday. This one was Anne's birthday.
First one was Denise wasn't feeling well, and we've been talking for a while how we were going because me and Cecily are into tea parties, right? And we wanted to have this tea party. We was going to wear fascinators, and we were really just going to have a fabulous time. And Denise was not feeling well. I remember we said, okay, we're going to take this tea party to Denise's house. And poor Denise, we showed up. She was not ready, or she was not prepared for us. And we showed up with everything, and we put that tea party together. And when I look back on those pictures, I can't speak for what it was for Denise, but for me, that tea party is one of the most memorable times that we spent together. I think Denise was so surprised when she showed up. She's
actually,
like, what are you guys doing? Cecily made all those fascinators, and I've never worn one in my life. Cecily made all those fascinators, and we had when we showed everyone.
It was really beautiful. I mean, when I think about memories, that will always be at one at the top of the list, and that makes me. I'll be quite honest. It makes me feel.
I think it's a beautiful. It's actually a beautiful thing that you are there for each other.
Yes,
but
unfortunately,
I need to. We need to take a break just about now. So we will be right back to discuss, this wonderful relationship a bit more. Welcome back to Dialogue with the Diaspora. Diane Haylock here with you again. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's Women's Month, And as we draw near to International Women's Day, we want to switch gears a bit to your career accomplishments as women. Derla, let's start with you as the advisor to the president of the CDB. That must have been an interesting journey navigating your way as a woman in a traditionally male-led organization. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Our time is very short here, so I need to get this in very tight snippets.
Well, I'd like to think that it was orchestrated and well planned, but I cannot say that really. I did economics starting at sixth form. I really got turned on to economics at an early stage. I went on to study economics at the bachelor's and master's level. I came back to Belize. I worked at the Central Bank, moved on to the Caribbean Development Bank, where I spent quite an extensive part of my career working in the economics department most of the time and in the corporate strategy division at one point. So that I was always, throughout that journey, I spent a lot of time interacting with the president's office, being involved in writing speeches. And as I moved up the ladder, I was engaged in policy advice, providing policy advice, providing advice internally as well as the countries. And so I think as I progressed, it seemed as a kind of natural extension and final pinnacle, so to speak, when I was asked by the current president in 2011 to join his team as his advisor. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years.
Wow. And it's been a good experience.
It's been a good experience generally. It's been rough. It's been tough. There have been lots of challenges. But I think I feel good about my being able to contribute at that level.
Wow. That's absolutely fantastic, Derla. Denise, you started your own business in another country. So what was that experience like?
That I've had the company about 20 years now. So 20 years ago when I came to, before that, when I came to Barbados, after I left England and I mentioned earlier, I stopped off in Barbados from studying veterinary lab technology. I saw the architecture in Barbados and I realized, this country has potential. Long story short, I studied in New York. I did interior design in New York and I came back, worked for a year with an interior designer in Barbados and then branched out on my own. At that time, 20 years ago, Barbados, people didn't hear much about interior designers. They heard a bit about interior decorators, but not designers. And myself and about 200 designers were the trailblazers for interior design in Barbados. It's been fun, it's my passion, as Derla said, and I guess any career you choose, it has its challenges. One of my challenge is that I'm in a predominantly male-oriented profession. Sometimes I'm the only female consultant on a project. Sometimes I'm the female consultant, the only female consultant in charge of everybody. So I have to be, it made me, you and Derla have known me a long time from I was young and I was always seen as quiet. Working in construction, you cannot be quiet.
Yes.
You have to toughen up.
Great. And for decades, the big four global accounting firms have been accused of having an underrepresentation of women in senior positions. Despite diversity programs aimed at getting more women in the top position, it doesn't seem to be moving fast enough. So what has been your experience like as a partner at PwC in Barbados?
Well, Diana, I am pleased to say that today the PricewaterhouseCoopers firm that I work for has trailed the blaze with respect to female representative at the partner level. We have 50% female representative in our partnership in Barbados. No one in the Caribbean comes near to us, and we're extremely proud of that. when I became a partner, at the time I was the sole female partner. There had been one partner before me, but she retired before I made it to the partnership. And I always, that feeling of sitting at a table with 10 men. And I think anybody who knows me, I didn't have Denise's problem. My problem was that I always said what I thought. So everyone knew what I was thinking, whether they agreed or disagreed. At least I always felt like it was important for me to speak up. And I would like to hope that somehow I was able to influence that change we have made, not just at the partnership level, but all the programs that we have put in place locally to build, to improve, to nurture, and to cultivate our women, and to make them understand that in this business that women can be as successful as men. Mm-hmm. It has had its challenges, but for me, I think personally, I would say there's been more ups than downs, till I'm at the point now where I feel like maybe I can retire, I can do something different. But I certainly believe, and I continue to say that people just doesn't even realize the sacrifices you make for a woman, because not that you want to be a man or you want to behave like a man. People believe you have to be a man to be successful. I've always felt like I can only be me. I have only been me. I will continue to be me, come what may. And I guess some people would say despite that, I've been able to, I guess, as Derla would say, you would hope that it is choreographed and designed that way. But I think we all know it's not choreographed. It's never choreographed or designed. You have to sometimes make that design yourself and choreograph your own next move, or else you'll be left behind.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is very refreshing to hear. And so, Cicely, I know that there are not very many women in your post as plant manager for a brewery. So how did you get started in that? And what has your journey been like as a plant manager?
No, I think these ladies have trailed away for me. I have had it relatively easy compared to them. I've always been in a male-dominated field. I spent my first 10 years here in the construction industry with Denise. I understand exactly what she means when you're out there and you're surrounded by men. Like Anne, I had always just made a conscious decision to say, this is me. I bring something to the table. I know what I'm talking about. I'm here to learn. I'm here to teach. And I do what I can to learn from every scenario that I'm in. Every project was different, and you learn from that. 10 years later, it was time for a change from consulting. And I joined the brewery 10 years ago. And at that time, the brewery was building a brand new brewery straight from the ground. I mean, bushes and everything. And construction behind me, 10 years of construction, I can build that brewery. So I became the project manager and built the brewery in record time, in budget. 1 year later, we had brand fancy, that's the picture there, brand new brewery. And about 6 months after the project finished, the brewery manager offered me a position as a packaging manager. So then I would be the first female packaging manager that the Barbados Brewery has ever had. And it was like, wow, sure, engineering at its best. That's what I wanted to do. And I'd been the packaging manager until quite recently. This new position really only started officially on January 1st. So I'm still a baby plant manager. But I must say my company, there are no restrictions. Our management team, also 50% male, 50% female. And I think right now, this is the time for women. You're here, nothing to stop you. The only thing that can stop you from being what you want to be is you.
So in terms of advice then to other women who might be trying to get to the top of their organizations or trying to succeed in what continues to be traditional male roles, organizations, positions, any quick advice you may want to share with us here?
Don't try to be a man, just try to be the best at what you do.
Yes, as Cicely said, she's up front. I bring something to the table. For me, is you have to have a passion for what you do, for whatever you choose, because that will spur you on. Because sometimes things are rough, and if you don't have that passion and determination, you're not going to survive. You're not going to survive.
I've never really focused on it as being a man's world or a woman's world. Certainly in moving ahead, I looked around and identified areas in the bank, that is CDB, that I would be interested in, and I went for it. It never occurred to me that there were glass ceilings that needed to be broken. I felt that I was capable of doing some things, and I made sure that people were aware that I was interested in doing those things. And same, I think, for a long time. I mean, I acted at one point as director of economics. I've held very senior positions, but I always saw myself as advisor to the president. I had admired previous holders of the position. I liked the idea of knowing that I was very familiar with the bank, its policies, its operations, its member countries, and I thought that I could bring something to the table. So there was no fear, there was no thinking that I was female, therefore I should not go after it. That is not saying that I'm not cognizant of the fact that there are real barriers to women moving ahead. And I've seen an experience with friends where they have been held back and they have not been given the opportunities, the same kind of support that our male colleagues have gotten. And therefore, you're not blind to the fact that there is discrimination. It may not be overt, and sometimes I don't even think people are aware that it's outright discrimination. But it is obvious that we are treated differently many times simply because.
Okay, Anne?
Yes, I would have to say, for me, I always said I never wanted to be a man. There was no mistaking. My father had always wanted to have boys. Poor guy. He had 7 girls before he got his final son. But in my life, I've always said, and every young person, and this is the passion of my life now, is to work with young people and to help them to achieve their potential. Sometimes I see more in them than they can see in themselves, and I'm trying to bring my passion to them. So I always say to them, as I said earlier, you have to be yourself. You have to be you, because if you can only be somebody else for but a little bit while, and you have to know what you want and you have to go after it. Do not be afraid. And then also, when we get there, as the point Derla was making, when we get there now, as what I am trying to do is how do we help those women who, as Derla said, they don't even realize that they don't have the support that their male counterparts do. Some of them don't even realize it. How do we as women know that we have made it, or made it, as however you want to define that, how do we help other women to achieve their objectives? So my advice to be is pay attention to those people, stick to those people who support you, who guide you, who are looking out for you, and pay attention to the successful people are in your organization, because they're always the shakers and the makers in your organization. You need to stay focused and be yourself.
So perhaps I can segue into my last question here. I mean, between the four of you, there is over 100 years of experience. Would you consider being part of some kind of virtual initiative where you can share some of your knowledge and experience with young women here in Belize? I think it's always important for us to make that connection.
Of course.
I would love to get involved in Belize, yes. Without a doubt.
I think it goes without saying. I have been out of Belize since 1983. but I'm very much a part of Belize, and we live Belize, and we live Belize through each other. We maintain that connection. Belize is very important to us. It's first and foremost, and therefore anything that I think we can do to advance the cause, to provide support, certainly I'd be willing to be a part of that without hesitation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so any final word from the four of you? Two words each.
My final words would simply be, no matter where I am, no matter where I live, I am always first and foremost Belizean.
A Belizean.
Belizean.
My husband on the side said, well, you all go back. That's all right. They would die if we go back. They would die. But I will say, I mean, Barbados is our home and Belize is also home. But when Barbadians would come, they would say, you're a Bajan now, you're a Bajan now. And I would tell them, I said, no, I will always be a Belizean. But it's also warming when they tell you, man, I know you're a Barbadian, because they have accepted you.
Absolutely.
And anybody who knows the culture here, that's a biggie. So we have two homes.
My friends, my sisters, if I may, this has been such an enlightening and inspirational dialogue with all four of you. Thank you so much for having joined us tonight for such a refreshing discussion.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I was a little nervous about coming on, but I did have a good time.
Thank
Great.
you very much.
All right. Viewers, unfortunately, we do need to take a short pause for a final ad break. Viewers, thank you for staying tuned in to Dialogue with the Diaspora. As mentioned at the start of our show tonight, March is Women's Month, and we are excited to be featuring the wonderful accomplishments of Belizean women in the diaspora. While we're extremely proud of what they have achieved and barriers many of them have broken, we're most excited by the opportunities for them to inspire women and girls in Belize, for them to mentor, and for them to lend their professional abilities and experiences to the advancement of Belize's women's agenda, which is oftentimes dormant. In that regard, we are certainly counting on our diaspora and on the voices of women like those we heard from today. With that, though, our time is up for tonight, but we will be back again next Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on CBTV and on Facebook on Colorblind's page. Do enjoy the remainder of your night, continue to social distance, wear your face mask, and remain vigilant. Good night, and take good care.